Hello and welcome to the Empowering Law Firm Leaders podcast, where we'll be talking to experts across the legal sector to discover the mindsets, behaviours, skills and digital tools that are needed to run a successful modern law firm. I'm Amy Bruce, host and marketing director at Osprey Approach. Today, I'm joined by law firm growth consultant who has 25 years experience in leadership and management strategy. He's host of the Law Firm Owners podcast, which shares insights into building a thriving law firm. And he's now author of the book Delegate Now to Supercharge Your Profits. Dan Warburton. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's great. It's great to be here. Real pleasure. Thank you.
So today we'll be discussing how law firm leaders can improve their ability to delegate to halve their workload. We'll cover topics discussed throughout Dan's new book, including how to build a loyal team, how to avoid blame culture so employees take responsibility, and what proactive management is and how to implement it. I have the book here with me today. I have written and scribbled notes all over it, so I'm very excited to get stuck in and run through a few key things. So I'm going to start at the beginning. The book starts by explaining what you call the law technician's valley of doom. You say it's the trap you've seen many law firm partners fall into. Can you explain what that is and what you're seeing in law firms?
Yeah, sure. And also, as we go into this conversation, it's not just about delegating your workload and halving your work. It's actually about increasing profitability. So you build a firm that's so much more profitable whilst you get to work the hours that you choose and do the work that you enjoy. That's the whole mission here.
Dream.
Yeah, and a lot of law firm owners and partners are far away from that. They are in what you've just pointed out, what I call the law technician's valley of doom. This is where a law firm owner or partner has spent years in academic training to become skilled at practicing law, and then they become the go-to expert. So in their law firm, all their team members come to them for advice and help. All their clients keep coming to them, expecting them to do the work. And then they keep fulfilling this vision they have of themselves as the go-to expert. And the problem is that they then directly correlate the profitability of their firm to the hours that they bill. And the way that they see to increase their profits is just to work even harder, longer hours and to bill even more. And that usually leads to exhaustion and burnout. We all know of all the lawyer jokes about how they're always busy, always working, stressed, exhausted. Many of the law firm owners I've spoken to and partners are working 60, 70, 80, even 100 hours a week. They haven't got time to be with their family, evenings, weekends. They can't go on holiday. If they do, they have to take a laptop. They try doing everything themselves. Their team members just annoy them from doing the work that they think is best, which is that billable work. And so what happens is at some point when they start feeling like they're a bit sick and tired of it and they want things to change, they realize actually they can't, because they've built themselves a business that relies on them to have to keep working at exhausting rates. And it's just unsustainable. And they're stuck in that. They can't see a way out. They can't sell the firm for any decent amount of money, because how can you sell something that if you walk away from falls apart? So then the only way they can sell it is for, whatever a multiplication of half of what its yearly profit is, which isn't very attractive. And then they need to remain on an earn out working as normal as they just slowly lose grip and control over the thing that they've spent years building, which is then very unfulfilling. So then they don't want to sell it. The other option is to close it down, but you need like 6 times your yearly insurance cover, and which is often hundreds of thousands, and most law firm owners and partners don't have that. So then that's not an option. So they really are in the law technician's valley of doom. And the key here is to move from being a technician that's relied upon for your entire business to run, to being somebody who owns your business, who leads your business, who is a business owner. And that's the journey that I've worked with law firm owners and partners to take them on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure many of our listeners can relate or definitely has seen that in their experience. And thankfully, there's a way out. That is what the book is exactly about, to get out of that valley of doom and be on that path to be a leader and not be drowning and being on holiday and all those good things that
Without your laptop.
Exactly, without your laptop. So before we go into sharing some details and best practices on how you go about doing that, we'll discuss some of your core 5 profitable delegation keys that you discuss in the book. You first share some tips on how leaders can prepare themselves for a project like this, to take on a journey like this. What questions do you recommend law firm owners should ask of themselves?
Yeah, the first thing to get is that delegating the billable work isn't the right thing to do for all law firm owners and partners. It's just not. Some of you might genuinely enjoy that side of it and want to just be left alone so you can focus on it. But the thing to get is that you can't also be out there doing business development and recruiting at the same time that you're doing billable work. And if you're not going to do it, you have to at least set some time aside to find a strategy and to employ and to bring on somebody who's got those, you know, communication, emotional skills needed to have those straight and difficult conversations to get the best performance out of your team if you're not willing to do it. So, you know, this is something I've learned over the years. It's just not right for everybody to delegate that workload away. But if you're somebody who wants to actually grow a thriving firm that doesn't require you to keep working yourself in an exhausting way, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, okay, how would the profits change if I had a team of 10 billing instead of me? So for instance, if we look at this, let's say you're an owner or partner, you're charging £500 an hour. At the end of that hour, all you've done is brought into the firm £500. And in that hour, you haven't been available for recruiting, business development, supporting team members, streamlining processes, all those things. And so at the end of that hour, your business hasn't really changed. You might have maintained the word of mouth that you currently have or where it's at, but nothing's going to change, and that will just continue forever like that. And you're not available for either your family, your own health, or anything in that hour. Whereas if you have a team of 10 billing, say even half of that, £250 an hour, at the end of that 1 hour, that's 2,500 being billed for. Even after their wages and expenses, that's over 2,000 profit coming into your firm. And in that hour, you are then available to go out and do business development, recruiting, and supporting the team members to ensure that they are all consistently meeting their targets. So when you get that and you see the profitability that becomes possible, only then does it mathematically and logically make sense to move in that direction. In other words, we're never going to do anything or change anything that we're doing until logically we see the sense of a new direction. So the first thing to do is to ask questions on how much more profitable can it be if I have teams of people effectively billing instead of me. That's the first step.
Yeah, great shout. And I think that's a good distinction actually to make, that if this isn't for you and you don't want to delegate that work away, there's still options, but you still
Yeah.
need those people in who are focusing on that marketing, BD, recruitment, support processes to move your business forward. That's, like you said, you're staying in one place. I think that's a great framework to start with.
Yeah.
Um, we mentioned the 5 profitable delegation keys. So I'm just going to note what those are. In the book, they are team loyalty, team responsibility, request and accountability, delegation structures, and acknowledgement. And like I said, we'll touch on a few of these in a second. You do share that whilst they all have their own merit, the absolute magic happens when you implement all 5 of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's get into the first one, team loyalty. You discuss in the book that team loyalty involves the team moving forward towards agreed targets and upholding an agreed set of values. It reminds me actually of the conversation I had with Simon McCrum earlier in the podcast. He uses the analogy of everyone rowing in the same boat towards the same direction and the same goals. It's a very
Yeah.
similar concept. So you discussed 3 points to build a loyal team. Can you talk us through what they are and why they're so important?
Yeah, sure. So fundamentally, above all, the core of all communication, the core skill that makes effective leadership and management happen is listening. I cannot stress this enough. If people, leaders, business owners just learn to actually listen, first acknowledge that they are not listening, and then actually practice listening, that in itself will have a game-changing outcome on their business. So listening is not waiting for the other person to stop talking so you can get your word in. It's not seeing how you can prove to them that you're right and they're wrong. It's not you trying to impress them or have them like you in some way. It's none of that. It's actually the skill of disappearing all your concerns you have on completely and losing yourself in total presence of that human being and leaving them feeling fully heard and acknowledged for what they've got going on or what they're dealing with. That's what actual listening is. And most people just don't get that. They are unaware of how their brains are constantly thinking and calculating instead of being present with somebody. What happens when you're present with somebody and listening is that they feel heard. And as when somebody feels heard, you've actually just solved 50% of all their nightmares they were dealing with. That's it. Just acknowledging what they're dealing with, how stressful it is, and what they got going on. That's it. And if you can just do that, you're halfway there to then creating all the solutions and all the outcomes that you could possibly dream of out of that one conversation. So with this skill, you can go into conversations with people that are very frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, and stressed, and you can be their absolute savior because you just listen. And then from there, they are more than likely open to then having a conversation of, okay, so now what? Until we feel heard, listened to, and respected, we don't bother collaborating. We just continue trying to fight to be right and prove that what I've really got going on is what I've really got going on. That doesn't move anything forward. So the first rule is that listening. Just start actually fully listening. The second one is conducting regular one-on-one conversations. So the only way that you create relatedness, connection, trust is in conversation. And if you don't schedule time for those conversations don't happen. They don't happen when you're passing each other on the corridor or when you're having a side conversation in some, conference chat over Zoom or Teams. It happens in proper sit down one-on-one time. Now, I'm not saying schedule one-on-one time with absolutely everyone in your firm, but you need to have one-on-one time with, say, each of your heads of department. And that needs to be on a weekly basis. And firstly, grounded in listening, you need to ask them, why are you here? What do you want to succeed at? What matters to you? What vision do you have for the firm? What would you love to see happening around here? And then intentively listen, really get in their world. And then from there, it's about agreeing targets. And then week by week, supporting them, not, whipping them or using manipulation and fear tactics again to do what you want, but actually collaboratively working with them and saying, okay, well, don't worry, there's nothing wrong here. There's only something missing. What is it that you could see you could do differently to make sure you hit your targets next week? What do you need from me? Do you need more training? Do you need more work delegating to you? Whatever it is. So already you can sense what I'm suggesting here is how collaboration is the key and is the way forward. So so the first one, listen fully. Second one, conduct regular one-on-ones. The third one is be and say, what you do. Like do as you say. If you stand for people to be listening, compassionate, collaborative, be that. If you start losing your temper, getting angry with people, then you're completely going against the values that you say that you stand for. If you want punctuality and people to be reliable, turn up bang on time for every single meeting and phone call. And the minute that you're not, you declare it. You say, you know what, I'm so sorry. I'm 1 minute late for this call. That's disrespectful to you because you've made an effort to be here. From now on, you can count on me to be on time for all our meetings. That's all you need to do to bring to not step over your lack of performance, to acknowledge it, take responsibility for it, and then move forward. And by doing that, you're demonstrating how you request others to be as well. So show up exactly as you intend to and as you want others to be in your firm. That's the three elements. And if you do that, people are more than likely to start showing up in a really loyal way towards the firm's visions and towards collaborating with you to achieve greatness.
Absolutely. It all goes back to that being heard, doesn't it? That being heard and respected. So point number one to build a loyal team was to listen, actually listen. Number two was to remind me again.
Regular one-on-one
Regular
conversations.
one-to-ones.
Actually,
Absolutely.
actually schedule them in because there's no such thing as spare time. If it's not scheduled, it's not happening.
Absolutely. And then number three is do as you say. So really model those behaviors and values that you want in your
Yeah.
firm. To be honest, I think that listening advice could be taken by probably everybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Whether it's your team, whether it's your family or your friends, really
yeah.
listen. Learn to really listen.
Yeah, it's a game changer in relationships. Your loved one, just to listen, just to be there, getting their world. And it's a practice of constantly letting go of all your triggers, emotions, concerns, worries. Keep letting them go. Keep bringing yourself back to being present with that human being and get that this is what they're experiencing. However ludicrous or crazy it might seem, that is just what they're experiencing. And that's their truth in that moment. That's the key.
Absolutely. If listeners can't stay for the rest of the conversation, that is the key takeaway to take from today. Truly listen, learn to really be present and listen.
Yeah,
So the second element of effective delegation is team responsibility. Within the chapter, you discuss one big problem that law firm owners face, and that's blame culture. I mean, I'm
yeah.
sure everyone is nodding away here potentially. What fuels blame culture? Where does it come from?
Well, it's simply the opposite of responsibility. You either have a responsibility culture or you have a blame culture. So the difference between the two is a blame culture is somebody says, "Oh, I never got that email." No, no, it's my email system. It's not that. Oh, I didn't know you wanted me to do that. I didn't know I had to do that, so I didn't do that. You know, or the systems are old. The data's just not right. Or the venue was too difficult to find or get to, or I couldn't find parking, or the buses were late, or there was too much traffic, or you know what, you don't ask me to do things properly. It's your fault. It's the manager's fault. He's a dick. Whatever it is, it's blame, 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 blame. It's avoiding taking any form of responsibility for why they are breaking their agreements and not doing what has been agreed. Whereas responsibility is saying, okay, I take responsibility that I've broken this promise. I take responsibility that I haven't turned up at the time that I said I would. I take responsibility that I haven't contacted the client and handled this in a way that's met their requests or left them satisfied. And at that point, you can then say, okay, well, what can I take responsibility for in what I've done ineffectively? And what could I put in place to make sure this doesn't happen again? And again, the way to lead a responsibility culture, which is a thriving work culture because everyone's stepping up and showing up and, elevating what, to close the gaps that they foresee. And it just makes a thriving work culture. I mean, it's amazing when people start to think and be like this. It all starts with you doing this. you know like if you've got a team member not hitting their billing targets, what can you take responsibility for why they haven't hit their billing target? So it's quite easy to try and get everybody else to be responsible and forget to be responsible ourselves. And it all starts with us. It's always us. What you could take responsibility for is that you haven't communicated with them their billable targets, and you haven't checked in with them. Are they clear on what their billable targets are? And then you can take responsibility for not checking in earlier that they had everything they needed to fulfill that. And you can take responsibility for not having them given any time or support to elevate their performance to ensure they could meet those billing targets. So when you really get into it, you can see lots of things you can take responsibility for. You can then approach that individual and say, you know what? I just wanted to check, did you know that you've got a target that you need to meet? And then if they say no, so, well, I take responsibility for not having communicated this clearly with you. I'm sorry about that. And going forwards, you can count on me to make sure that you're clear on what you need to achieve and fulfill to thrive and get the career progression that you want. Yeah. And if they say, yeah, I know what they are, and say, well, okay, well, look, I take responsibility for you not being clear on what was needed to fulfill them and not having everything you needed to fulfill that. And going forwards, I'd like us to set up a regular weekly one-on-one call, and I'm going to support you to ensure that you meet your targets and have everything that you need to succeed and thoroughly love working here. I mean, if your boss spoke to you like that, how would you feel?
Mhm.
It's moving, isn't
Absolutely.
it? It's just like, wow, what a great human being. What a wonderful person to be employed with. And again, this feeds back into the loyalty. But this is how you move people to being responsible and out of blame. First, take responsibility first. Be clear on your communications, make clear requests, ensure they're clear on the request and clear on the deadlines. And this is how you then build those people that then we'll start to pick up the pieces. We'll start to make sure that the client's work gets finished on time, that they make sure the money gets collected. And then when you go on holiday, you go away because you know there's a responsibility culture across your firm, stuff gets handled when you're not there. And it's incredibly freeing when you start to see it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that conversation, how that impacts you, it just makes you feel totally seen. It makes you feel cared for. It makes you feel that your efforts are valid and that
Mm,
you're really contributing. I mean, all those things are you hear about research and stats that come out about what employees really want, not even just in the legal sector, but just generally. And all those things are it. And isn't it
mm.
amazing that that can just purely be done by saying, yeah, I take responsibility for X, Y, Z. Here's how I'm going to support you.
Yeah, that's it. And naturally, when you take responsibility for something, you end up becoming the leader for them to naturally want to take responsibility for their lack of participation in the ineffective result.
Yeah, you end up hearing the same thing repeated back to you, which is when you know that you're connected and working together and truly
That's it.
collaborating.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. You've already said this phrase earlier in our conversation, so I can see how much this means to you and how much you stand behind it. But to turn around blame culture, you offer a piece of advice which any leader can take on board in the legal sector or otherwise. And the phrase is, there is never anything wrong, there is only ever something missing. I really love that. I think that really just sets a really great start. So, can you just share a little bit on why that's important for legal leaders to acknowledge that phrase when helping take responsibility?
Yeah, because one of the reasons why people are blaming is because they're fearful of what will happen if they take responsibility.
Mm,
And so they're avoiding taking responsibility because they're going to get into trouble. They're going to get snarled at. They're going to have their job's going to be on the line, you know. Their peers are going to push them out the group, whatever it is. Whereas if you get this mantra going round and saying, look, did you know you had these billing targets to meet? And then they say yes, you reply, don't worry, that's okay. There's never anything wrong here. There's only something missing. Me and you are going to work together to just see what's missing to ensure you don't have this happen again. And what happens is you start freeing people of having to avoid blame. And instead, they start to replace blame with just taking responsibility. Because it doesn't mean that taking responsibility means you start blaming yourself. No, you don't blame yourself either. You don't blame anything. There is never anything wrong here. There's only ever something missing. And once you get this, it just makes everything so much lighter and invites people to naturally start to take responsibility.
absolutely. I guess I think you discuss this in your book as well. One of the things that leaders may say when you give the advice of they take some responsibility too, is that does that mean all the blame is then on them? Is it all their fault?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the point. That there is still no blame. It's just taking responsibility. Taking responsibility is free of blame. Taking responsibility is just acknowledging your lack of participation or something you haven't done that's caused a dissatisfying result to be produced. That's it, without blame. And you just
Hmm.
become investigators to then looking at, well, what is it that we need to put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again? And I look for it on my behalf, and you look for it on your behalf, and together we'll be a better, stronger, wiser team, and we'll achieve greater things together going forwards.
Yeah, that's a great become investigators. I love that. And I
That's
think
it.
that
Yeah.
that's the fundamental of creating a continuous improvement culture as well.
Yeah.
That there's always bits we can do. There's always a 1% improvement. There's always something else we can look to
Yeah.
elevate and enhance. And having that as the fundamental, no one's to blame here, helps enable that because people can bring up stuff. Oh, I've noticed this. I've got this idea to make it better. It starts to foster that sort of communication as well, I suppose.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. And it has everybody widen their awareness that things can always be refined, that there is always
Mm.
something more that I'm not seeing that I can take responsibility for, that if I did and had a breakthrough and would elevate my performance, team participation, and the firm's overall result by a small to major amount. There's always that possibility. And I think that's an inspiring frame of mind to take on, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's miles different from the initial place we were talking about of just this cycle of doom. It's worlds apart.
And blame, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The third section in your book is requests and accountability. You share best practices for making a clear request of your team. You cover setting measurable results, clear timeframes, agreement on what's been said. But there's always going to be, and we mentioned that there's always going to be scenarios where those promises are broken, those accountability, those requests aren't met. What advice can you share for leaders when a promise is broken by one of their team?
Okay, so you need to either set up a one-on-one conversation about it, or ideally just have one set up every week. The great thing is about that is everyone knows they're going to have to explain themselves and explain their results every week, and quite often their performance peaks just before those one-on-one meetings, so they've got something to show and demonstrate. But what you would do is, in that, you would first acknowledge, thanks for taking the time to be on this call today. You might acknowledge them for some work they've done well and some effort they've put in, and it has them feel seen for their efforts to begin with. And then it makes whatever you're going to say next just be easier to take. And then you can say, so let's look at your targets. So you build this much, or you achieve this, or you open this many files. Do you get that we've got an agreement that all senior associates or all associates in the firm are to open this amount of files a month, or that? And if they say no, say, okay, thanks for letting me know. I'm sorry you weren't clear on that. That's down to my lack of communication. I'll make sure that going forward, you're aware of it. Now, the reason you need to always ask is, do you know that there's this target, and do you know that you've broken it? Is because there might be something missing in your leadership and management. So that's always checking in first. Is my leadership management in place first? Because that needs to be in place first before I can ever expect somebody to perform well. Then the second part is if they say, yeah, I was aware of that, and they say, well, are you aware that you didn't meet that target? They say, yeah. Now comes a famous line. Well, look, don't worry. There's never anything wrong. There's only something missing. And I'm going to work with you in this session now to make sure that you have a breakthrough in this, and that you start producing results that you can be really proud of. So that at this point, we then say, so what can you see is missing that would make the difference? Make sure this doesn't happen again. And this is where a lot of business owners, law firm owners, they move into advising instead of leading. And there's a very clear distinction between the two. When you advise, you give people the answer. You tell them what they need to do. And what happens is that people just nod along, they agree, and then they just go back and they don't really act on what they've just agreed to. They're just in the moment, just appeasing you, keeping you happy. So instead of advising, lead by asking, what can you see is missing that would make a difference? And then hold the silence. Like, let them sit there and grill in the awkwardness of the moment until they come up with an answer. And this is how you basically effectively coach people to become high performers, because high performance is grounded on the ability to distinguish problems and to solution find in the moment. And so whereas somebody on their own facing their computer with their phone ringing, emails coming in, will just never have the space to practice this, in this weekly one-on-one, holding that silence and conversation, you're starting to cause people's brain to have to wake up and fire in new ways that usually it wouldn't fire. And what happens is an individual might say, like, let's just say they're late, and then we find out that they're late because they get up late, and they say, what could you do? They say, I could set, you know what, I'll set my alarm clock half an hour early in the morning. Now, me and you know that that's not going to work, because if it was that simple, they would have just done that. So at that point, you say, okay, so now you acknowledge them for whatever it is. It's a good idea, good thinking. And me and you know that if it was that simple, you would have done this by now. What else is missing that will have you be able to be on time for this meeting? And then it will be, in the end, I just need to leave the house half an hour earlier in case there is traffic, in case there is something. And then be at your desk, set up 15 minutes early so you can get a breather, maybe a very quick cup of tea or coffee before the meeting. So then you've got a buffer of breakdown time should something happen, so then you can be on time for the meeting. But you're basically guiding them to come up with a solution, guiding them to tell you what they're going to do, and guiding them to tell you why that's going to work and why that's going to be beneficial. When you do that, you're guiding them to imagine the scenario and to see it for themselves. And when they do that, they are then much more likely to act on the suggestion that they've come up and they've explained to you than if you told them it. So that's how you handle a broken promise.
Yeah, brilliant. I think the idea of sitting in the silence is great advice and is actually really great for in a sales environment. So not even just with your team, but actually from a new business environment, just getting comfortable with silence and letting people just
Yeah.
respond is just a really great piece of advice overall. But you're right, when someone says that idea out loud, it becomes their own thought. They're more accountable to it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
see it as a vision, as something true, rather than, like you said, just nodding along. The leader feels happy that they've nodded, the employee feels happy that they've nodded, and actually nothing ever changes.
No, that's right. That's why you keep hearing of board meetings and loads of meetings and nothing really changes or happens
Hmm.
because it's all
Yeah.
just advising and agreeing rather than leading and holding people to account. Very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these things, like you said at the beginning, all these things, the magic happens when you get them together. But you can see they're so interconnected. Once you've done one,
Yeah,
it's so easy to progress to the next thing.
that's
The
it.
system is all one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the next question on the listener's mind, well, what do you do if somebody just continually breaks promises? Well, the point is
Yeah.
if you've got those weekly one-on-one calls, you can take notes each week of what promises they fulfilled, how many they broke, how much of their targets they met and didn't meet. And then after a month, 2 months, 3 months, you can say to that individual, thanks so much for being here and your time. Just to let you know, I do see the effort that you put here and I appreciate having you here as a team member. I just wanted to look at your targets. Now, I've been tracking this and I've been supporting you now, you know, on a one-on-one basis and really giving you everything that I can. And at the end of this month, do you realize that you still have not got anywhere near your billing targets? And and it gets to this point here, I need to start questioning, like, why are you at this firm? You say you want a pay rise, you want a promotion to become partner, but the fundamental thing is just demonstrating that you're reliable and that when you give your word to something that you can fulfill it. And at this stage here, I'm in a difficult situation. I don't know what more I can do for you to be able to ensure that you've not only got a position at this firm, but get the career progression that you want. What do you suggest right now? I don't know what to do. You know,
Yeah, I think
and they can't go anywhere with that because you got the stats, you got the numbers. This is the point. A lot of people who are in a leadership management position, they struggle with leadership management because they're trying to lead from thoughts and feelings.
mm,
Oh, but I like them. Oh, but they're a wonderful person. Oh, they've got kids at home. They've got a family, all this. Now, I'm not saying be a dictator and militant and disrespectful. Of course, be compassionate and kind. And at the same time, you're running a business here. You get a human body and you take the blood out. What happens that it just doesn't work. You must have good blood flow throughout that body, the same as money in a business. You must have good flow of money in a business for the business to run. Otherwise, the fun ends, everything stops. And then it's not just that one family of that employee that suffers, everybody suffers, and it can jeopardize the whole entire firm because if you let somebody consistently operate at a low level of performance, you're basically promoting that everybody else can do the same. So you're then promoting a low work ethic as such. And so you can't lead from thoughts and feelings. You have to lead from facts and figures, those numbers. And if you have those numbers at hand and you keep talking to them, people can only agree with you and acknowledge it and get it. And you can be kind and you can be with them whilst they're in tears and just listen to them and get what they're dealing with. And then saying, yeah, and I get it. And I get how challenging this is for you. And I know what pressure you're under. And the numbers say what they are. So look, what do you want to do going forward? Do you want to work with me one more month and we'll really get these numbers up? Or do you want us to look at what other position we might be able to find you in the firm? Or do you want to possibly think about handing in your resignation? And on what timescale would you want to do this? And I can ensure that I write you a good, report so the next employer knows that you are reliable, you are open to communicating, and you are actually skilled at this, this, and this. It might not be this, but this is your thing. This you are good at. You see how you can be so understanding, kind of supportive, but still have integrity to the investors, the other partners, and to the whole business vision as a whole. So that's how you handle ongoing broken promises.
Yeah, and dealing with those in the moment, I think um, a lot of bad leadership comes from not dealing with those potentially awkward conversations earlier
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
That then builds this toxic culture, and people get rewarded or allowed to stick around or allowed to behave in a way that just doesn't meet the values of the firm or the purpose of the firm. And this goes beyond targets and billable targets. These are other things that have been promised and agreed upon of how people will behave. And if people aren't called out on that, that just impacts the entire team, entire
yeah,
culture.
yeah. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
In the book, you share that successful owners who are highly profitable and have that free time to focus on what matters implement proactive management and aren't doing reactive management. What does proactive management look like? What are some potential practical things that leaders listening can implement?
So the difference between proactive and reactive leadership is reactive leadership is where you're focused on doing, say, billable work, and then something comes up that interrupts you, and you have to stop what you're doing, and you have to then go and handle that, and then finally get back to the billable work, and then something else happens, and then it's lunch, and then it's the end of the day, and then it's whatever it is, and you're just constantly having to stop whatever you're doing and feeling like you're constantly being interrupted and having to be reactive, surviving what the world throws at you. Whereas proactive leadership is where you take time to plan your week ahead. What are you going to do when? And what are the very most important actions that you must make totally non-negotiable this week to have you build that important law firm or build that thriving law firm? Because you've got two kinds of actions generally. The Eisenhower matrix breaks it down to four, but I make it simpler. There's two: urgent and important. Urgent is everything that needs to happen for your business to keep operating and for it to just stay in business. And if you keep doing those, then what and nothing else, what happens is you end up creating a position for yourself in the business of the firm where you just have to keep doing what's urgent over and over and over again until the day you physically can't. Whereas if you schedule in and do what is important, the important actions are the actions that build a better, slicker, more enjoyable, profitable law firm tomorrow. And so the idea here is you must first schedule in what you're going to do when. When is your time for doing billable work? And then what are those important actions and when you're going to do them? So every Friday evening at the end of the day, when it's everything's quiet and off, you would just spend half an hour scheduling in when you're going to do this work. And when you do this, you get a real good chance at just sitting back and just checking in on your workload. How many weeks ahead? And if you can see you can't get billable done for weeks ahead, well, you just got to be delegating it away. So then you schedule in, right, who is the person that's most suited to take this work directly off my plate? You would then send them an email with 3 times that you're available and ask them to attend that call. Even better, get an app or a program with a scheduling link and tell them, can you please click here and choose the time that works for you? Then that automatically gets fitted into the spaces that you intentionally leave available for such phone calls. When you do this, as the week comes, you then need to practice discipline to do what you said you would do in that time frame and to not check your emails and to not let people constantly bombard you and distract you from doing whatever is your billable work or your most important work. And so the way you get to that is by making clear requests of others. Look, unless necessary, only bring things to me in the one-on-one session. And you can say to them, look, if something you're dealing with is pertinent to a client relationship or might affect what a client is going to receive or affect the way that we're perceived by a client or is in some way important towards cash flow, something like that, then absolutely just pick up the phone to me. That's no problem. I want you to know I'm here for you. However, I'd like you to ask, can this wait for our one-on-one?
Mm.
If it can, then just write it down. Then each week we will go through absolutely everything you've had come up in detail, and together we're going to work on you just becoming so skilled at handling those things in the future. When you do this, you create this space where you can be left in peace to focus on both your urgent and getting your important work done. And the skill here is to always leave lots of what I call breakdown time. So in the morning, let's say you've got 3 hours work, you'd only schedule something that takes 2 hours in. And then you would leave a half an hour chunk before and a half an hour chunk after it. And then lunch as well, you would leave maybe 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after. Then in the afternoon, you'd have two major tasks, and you might leave 1 hour free every day between 4 and 5 p.m. And you keep that as breakdown time. You keep that for when those surprises and when those shocking things happen. You know you've always got that time to fit those in. And it's a real fight to protect it, because you might have clients and people that want stuff done fast, but you do not give in on honoring that breakdown time for you, because then that means you can come across as ultra reliable over and over again to all your team members and all your clients. And then that just builds this excellent authority and leadership around you, where people really listen and follow you because you are your word to such a finite degree. And that's where real power and leadership comes from, is when you're actually doing, what you say that you're going to do. By when you say, doing it how and by when you say you're going to do it is when you gain that authority. And so that's the difference between proactive and reactive leadership. Reactive is where you don't schedule anything, you just leave yourself available at all times, you constantly are interrupted and disrupted, versus when you plan and then make clear requests of others to honor your boundaries so that you can fulfill and perform at that consistently high level.
I think often leaders feel that the reactive, the being open and available all the time is what's required of them. And actually, sometimes I think that sets bad behaviors for everybody else. Because if
Yeah,
you're respecting your own time and you're scheduling your own time, you'll see that others around you do a similar thing. And like you said, that then ensures you're not breaking the promises that you made to your clients, to yourself, to your business, to your colleagues.
yeah,
I think we can get stuck into we need to be available all the time.
yeah.
And that probably leads into your thinking that a lot of leaders tend to advise and not actually lead.
That's it. That's it. And then when you leave yourself available at all times, and you let people disrupt you and basically emotionally trigger you
Mm,
off the path that you'd committed to following their path, their suggestions, do what they need, when they want, how they want it, you become untrustworthy. You cannot be trusted. Because how do I know, if I then ask you to do something and you give your word to it, that you're not going to let somebody else pull you off the commitment that you've just made to me? I'm not going to be
mm.
able to trust you to do that.
Yeah, it's a great shout. That's a really great shout. Um, I think also the idea of being proactive and scheduling and taking that time is difficult. That's the difficult bit that we've
Yeah.
got to do. It's
Yeah.
easy to firefight. It feels
Yeah.
stressful at the time, but really it's easy to be jumping on things, get distracted by things. That's the easy thing.
Yeah.
Being proactive, setting that time aside is difficult, and it takes
It is.
commitment and it takes dedication.
Yeah. It's not something you ever master. It's something you just practice every day and
Hmm.
get better at through practicing.
Yeah, absolutely. You litter the book with really great case studies. There's some really great examples of success here where people have got out of that cycle and have managed to free up time and improve profitability and all that good stuff. Can you share one that really stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I cover the story of Carlos, the managing partner of Cas Law. It was in a US firm, and 9 people in the firm. He he was absolutely exhausted, burnt out. He was working 100 hours a week, and he just absolutely had enough, and just didn't know like how the hell he could keep going at that pace. So he hired me to work with him to turn things around and to be able to build a law firm that he loved. And the first thing we discovered was that he made himself available at all times, and that he had this whole thing about creating a great firm culture. But the way that he thought was to create it was to have everybody completely stress free, and to
Mm,
just finish off people's work for them, to basically, allow people to just do a bit of work, not finish it anywhere near finished, send it to him, and then he'd have to finish it all off, complete it, and then submit it to the client. And so yeah, he had a good culture where people were like all happy and, love their work environment, but he was absolutely exhausted and burnt out. And in fact, that might seem like the case, but I bet that at that time, the people felt like they weren't being utilized,
mm,
and they felt like they weren't such a part of the firm, or of part of building it into something great because they were never really fully involved or requested to be involved. And sure enough, one of the first things we started to work on was making clear requests and agreeing deadlines. He said that the feedback he got when he started to do that was how much people loved it, how they liked it, because they actually finally saw what it was that they needed to do to prove to him that they were brilliant participants and valued in the firm. So he was quite shocked by that. But once we'd implemented that, the regular one-on-one calls, making clear requests, weekly on a weekly basis, holding each team member to account. At the beginning, between him and his other partner, he had 6 weekly one-on-one calls. She was having 3. Bit by bit, they managed to elevate everybody's performance. And one of the other things was before we started working together, he was receiving 250 text messages a day from his 9 people wanting to know, what do I do? How do I do this? How do I do that? Where's this file? Now, I thought it was a week. So I said to him, how are the 250 text messages a week going when I finally interviewed him after he worked with me for a year? And he said, no, Dan, that wasn't a week. That was a day. So that's why I vividly remember it was 250 text messages a day. I don't know how he counted it. He came up with that number. It was probably more and he rounded it to that. But he said how after just 10 days of working with me and requesting, look, unless necessary, don't contact me until these one-on-one sessions. Just ask yourself, look, can this wait till then? If it can't, contact me, that's fine. But if it can, just save it to the one-on-one. He went from 250 text messages a day to about 15 a day in just 10 days by implementing that. So just these few tweaks started to radically transform his experience of running his firm. Within 3 months, he'd went down to working 60 hours a week, which is still a lot, but compared to 100, that's a dramatic change. And he started to say to me, this is great. I've just got like an hour or two with my family in the evenings and on the weekends. You could see a bit of a tear in his eye where he was happy that he started to have a life and he started to see a glimmer of possibly enjoying being a law firm owner and practicing law again. And after 6 months, we then looked at it and we compared the same 6 months of that. We compared those 6 months to the previous year's same 6 months. And he'd made an 89% profit increase.
Wow.
Profit. Within 9 months, he was working around 45 to 50 hours. And as far as I know, he's maintained that and he's now got 2 new partners and he's grown by another, I think he's doubled the headcount in a year and a half now because he's available to do that, to do the interviewing, recruiting, the one-on-one time to ensure they're integrating and getting the training they need. And now, I mean, he's an incredibly thriving law firm that he absolutely loves and he's making really good money. But it just shows how effective these core leadership and management principles are and what becomes possible.
Yeah, I mean, what a success story. And I mean, I'm so happy for him, but also I think the team as well. Like if you did an employee survey, I'm sure those numbers of satisfaction would have shot through the roof because as much as we think we want an easy life, actually we want to be challenged. We want to show how we contribute. We want to be put to our tests and show that we're good at what we do. And by taking the ownership, all of that of yourself, you think you're doing the right thing, but actually you're leaving people's potential on the table. I can only imagine the team are just so glad for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're getting the career progression they want. One of them was fighting like mad to become partner. And Carlos started off at the beginning of our session saying he's never going to make partner here. And now he's partner.
Yeah.
Because he's had that one-on-one time with Carlos, where Carlos has said, look, you can't speak to clients like that. If you can't word it this way, you need to say it this way. And when you're framing this or when you're creating this document, you can't start off by saying this. You need to say this. You need to summarize what we have done so they have the confidence in what we do to then read. He was able to do all this with him and broke his ego down and enabled him to become a skilled business owner that then earned him the position as partner. He wouldn't have gained that partner position had he not had that one-on-one time with Carlos. But also, I know some of the listeners are probably thinking, oh, well, that's a small team, but does this work with larger firms? So there's another client I've recently completed working with. His name was Habib. He had a law firm that was employing 69 people at the beginning and had 7 departments, everything from family law, immigration. So quite a lot of B2C work. But he was absolutely exhausted. Same thing, fed up, tired, was doing a lot of the billable work himself. He was finishing work off by himself. He was getting into the office at 6 o'clock in the morning, wasn't leaving till like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and was just distraught. He'd absolutely had enough. And so, again, the same thing we discovered was that he wasn't making clear requests. He wasn't holding his team members to account. He was letting them literally make fun of him and do whatever they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted, especially to the heads of department. And so what happened was, once he started to have these regular one-on-one calls with each head of the department, one of the heads of the department decided to resign because he couldn't keep up the pressure, because they'd managed to hide out up until then. And one of the other ones, it just wasn't going to work, so he had to replace them. But he was able to distinguish that if he could just have that one that was going to resign replaced and replace the other one, that would transform his firm, because he could finally, he then had the time to look at the financials of each of the 7 departments. In the end, it was the immigration department that was causing him so much headache. He decided to just close it down completely and let go of the person that wanted to, no longer be in that position, and then just make sure each client was served until the end of their file, and just not take on any more of that. And that just lifted loads of weight off his shoulders. He then had the time to focus on the other 6 departments. He then put a high performer into that 6th one where they weren't any good. The first one didn't work out, but then they stayed on in another position in the firm. He then tried someone else out. They were perfect. And now, through these weekly one-on-ones, he's got to the point where he had this dream of being able to pay himself £500,000 at the end of the year as a salary. And he had way over that after a year working with me, but he decided not to pay himself that. He decided to use the money to go and buy another law firm. And then I said to him, wow, great. As this was like his 2nd or 3rd acquisition. And he said to me, yeah, but Dan, this hasn't been like the other acquisitions. I said, what do you mean? He says, I haven't done any of it. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, all I've done is I've just called a meeting with all the team members that I think that can handle it. I've told them what the mission is, what we're going to do, what the challenges I see. I then led conversations for other people to come up with the answers, suggest what they're going to do, commit to the dates, give me the dates they're going to do it by. And then after that, I just had weekly one-on-one calls with the individuals that were involved, that were also some of the heads of department. And the whole thing has been acquired and merged whilst I've been on holiday for the first time in 5 years. In fact,
Amazing.
I received an email from him saying, I'm currently in, where's the place in Indonesia everyone likes to go? Bali. He says, I'm currently in Bali for the next 14 days and I'm not checking my emails. And
Yes.
literally, that's what it said on his email responder.
Yeah. Love that.
So you can see again how even in a larger firm, these core skills are absolutely transformational. And this
Yeah.
is why I've committed my life to this, because I found nothing else improves the quality and lifestyle of a law firm owner and its profitability than these skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you read the book and you go, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. This feels so logical. Yet a lot of
Yeah.
us don't do it. We get so stuck in this cycle and the firefighting and all that stuff. And yeah, the book is so practical, and these 5 steps are laid out in such a way that you can literally tick them off. It's like a to-do list of things that you need to
Yeah.
implement and succeed. Dan, I'd love to finish the conversation talking about what you feel in your years of work working with law firms and seeing this success. What what skills, what mindsets, what thinking sets those successful, thriving leaders apart from those that are just stuck in that cycle?
Those that are stuck in the cycle, they they have this like strange pride in being the go-to expert, the one
Mm.
that knows it all, that's the one that has control and power over everyone, and who has all these accolades, awards, skills, and they clutch onto that and fight like mad to hold that as their identity and their position. And they have a real, though they don't realize it, they have a fear of retiring and letting go of that, because that identity gives them such a sense of importance, security, whatever it is. And then what happens is, through that, they then become the bottleneck to their entire firm's growth, because they're not willing to let other people participate fully. They're not willing to take any slightest risk on anybody to just practice something, try something out and try and learn it, and make what can be easily contained mistakes before work is released to clients. They won't even chance that. And so they then stay stuck, overwhelmed, and in that technician's valley of doom. Versus those that succeed, they realize that they are or were the go-to expert, and that makes them an extraordinary leader and manager to others to mirror them and to learn everything that they know, and in doing so benefit the growth of the firm and to benefit an even greater vision than they have already than themselves as the go-to expert. And so they are then willing to challenge themselves and to reach out to other experts and other people to initiate conversations about, how do I do this? How do I learn leadership, management, delegation? And then they're willing to schedule in the time weekly to study it, learn it, practice it, and implement it, to ease themselves out of being that central expert to becoming a business owner and a leader of experts. And then those are the ones with that mindset that I've seen go on to build truly thriving, fantastic lifestyles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key takeaway from that is to be open to change. Consider that there is a different way, and be open to the advice and best practices that impact that could have on your life. Be open to that, and that will allow you to envision it. It will allow you to implement it. It will allow you to think about what different may look like.
Yeah, yeah. And on an even more simplified basis, just be open to the fact that your life could be so much more fulfilling and rewarding than it currently is. And that if you're exhausted, burnt out, tired, and feeling like you're in Groundhog Day, just doing the same thing, as Einstein says, is just madness. You're just going to keep getting the same result. And you've just got to wake up and be honest with yourself that, look, you've got one life, time is running out. If you don't get this starting today, you likely never will. You need to literally scare yourself and shock yourself with the truth, because until you actually get the situation that you're in, you won't do anything about it. None of us do. Most people who are overweight don't start losing weight until they get a health scare, you know?
Mhm.
So if needed, you need to scare yourself with honesty to where you're at versus where you actually want to be. And then just be open that there are business owners and law firm owners out there that have built truly thriving law firms that are living these fantastic lifestyles whilst getting to impact the lives of others in a great way, both employees and clients. And then just be open to that. And then just start having conversations. Just have conversations. It's in conversations. You'll discover things. You'll learn things. Go and try and spend time with other law firm owners that succeeded. Go to networking events. Ask them. Be open with them. You know, reach out to people like me, consultants that specialize in all of this. And when you do that, bit by bit, you will start to join a few dots. You will start to ease your mind into seeing, hang on a minute, there is a new way here. There is an invisible door in front of me that before I couldn't see. And where's the door handle? Okay, I've got the door handle. Okay, what's the first step? How do I go through it? How do I move through it? Then what? Then what? Then what? And if you stay in those conversations and keep being open to it, you will start to move towards a truly rewarding new future. Really will.
What a great way to end this conversation. And hopefully this podcast episode may be that scare that they need. And if not, the book definitely will be. So thank you so much, Dan, for your advice and for writing the book. It was really great to read. Thank you for sharing your knowledge here today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. It's been a real honor to be here, and it's I'm left feeling empowered with what's possible for all of us if we do more of this.
Absolutely. I feel the same too. I'm implementing some of these things as we end this conversation.
Nice, love it, love it.